Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Miranda and today I want to talk to you about my favourite books that I read in 2024. This is always one of my favourite videos to film and my favourite videos to watch, so I'm very excited to talk to you about some books that I've read this year that I probably haven't talked about before, lots of them because I've been bad at keeping up with making videos, but yeah, I'm really excited to shout about them because honestly these books are so excellent. I've read lots of kind of meh books this year. I've had quite a few that have been disappointing, but these ones really stood out. This was a very neat top 10, but then I read one book at the very end of the year that just slipped in there. And also I'm going to be talking about them in the order that I read them because I don't want to rank them. I don't want to, sorry. So the first book that I read that makes my top books of the year is Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon. This is one of the most unique books I have ever read. It is unlike anything else, and for that it really just cut across lots of the other things that I was reading and really hit right to me. On the first page, I was like, this is excellent. So this is set in ancient Syracuse and it follows two friends who regularly visit a quarry where Athenian prisoners are being held. They take food to them, but they also request poetry and excerpts of plays back from them. One of the friends has the idea to put on a performance with these Athenian prisoners of Medea, or Medea. I prefer Medea because it sounds less like hello Medea, you know. This book has everything. It has intense drama, it has terror and horror, and so much humour and heart to it. It has a fascinating plot, amazing characters. The most unique thing for me about this book is its narrative voice. It is narrated in a kind of Irish modern way. The narrator, the author is Irish, and it just adds so much character and humanity to this that is so unexpected that I just loved it. Like it's brilliant and would probably be my number 1 or 2 from this year. Next is Bad Habit by Alana S. Portero, translated from Spanish by Mara Faye Lethem. This is about a young trans woman growing up in Madrid. She's growing up in a sort of working class suburb, surrounded by lots of different interesting characters, and it's about her trying to find her place in the world and figure out who she is, but also figure out who all the people around her are, and how they can kind of fit into her idea of her own femininity. And it's about the violence and hatred that she experiences, but also about the love that she finds within people and within herself. And I cried so much reading this book. It is gorgeous and one that I think pretty much everyone should read. We have to skip quite a way forward for the next book in my reading year to one that has been pretty much on everyone's lips this year, and that is Intermezzo by Rooney. This is brilliant. Obviously, I'm not like the biggest Sally Rooney fan. I adored Normal People and I couldn't really get into conversations with friends, so I gave up on it. But this is everything that I loved about Normal People and more. This is primarily about the relationship between two brothers who are separated in age, in personality. They were quite close when they were growing up, but they've drifted apart. But they've just lost their father, so they are dealing with grief. They're trying to understand their relationship with each other and who they want to be, where they want to go, and also the relationships that they have with women romantically, and how all of these things just intermingle together into a big mess of emotion and tragedy a lot of the time. I just think that the way Sally Rooney observes relationships is second to none. I was just taken on this journey with these characters so completely and utterly, like, drawn into it. And I just love the way she writes about people. She makes you hate them and love them and just know them. It's really, really amazing. Next is a book that it has taken me far too long to get around to reading, and that is The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. This is a book I've known about for ages. It came out a while ago, and ever since then I've been kind of intrigued by it and known that I will love it, especially because when it came out it won so many awards, loads of people talking about it, and it is about something that personally really interests me, which is the women who were murdered by Jack the Ripper. But what this book does so brilliantly, I think, is that it takes you into the world that these women lived in, and shows you their kind of specific circumstances and lives, which are all so different and diverse, but brought together by misfortune and oppression and a world that is not suitable for living in unless you are a very specific kind of person. So it shows you these specific circumstances, but it also tells you so much about the stories of women generally in the late 19th century in London and the UK and Europe more widely as well, because not all of them were originally from England, and how people lived more generally, how families worked, how work functioned, how society was made up, and all of these different threads are woven together so expertly to build this incredible picture that ultimately leads to the deaths of these women, and that is so sad. I felt enraged by this book and deeply moved by it, and also just transported by the impeccable writing. I can't believe I haven't read it before. It's excellent, like everyone said it would be. Next is The Echoes by Evie Wyld. I have read 3 of Evie Wyld's novels now and loved 2 of them. One of them, All the Birds Singing, was not my favourite, but this and The Bass Rock are just fucking great. This starts off with a ghost, the ghost of a young man who has died in circumstances we don't know about, leaving behind his girlfriend, Hannah, and he is haunting Hannah and trying desperately to get her to notice him as she kind of plunges into this depression following his death. And we also follow Hannah previous to his death and her secrets that she wasn't telling him, various things that were going on in her life leading up to his death. And from there, it kind of spirals out into looking at all of the different characters involved in Hannah's life primarily, and her childhood growing up in Australia, what led her to London, where the book is set primarily in the present day, her family members going back several generations, and the people around them, and all of the darkness and hurt and trauma that they have endured and passed on to subsequent generations. All of this in about 230 pages. She's incredible. Again, this is one that is deeply dark and horrible, and also really funny and witty and terrifying and ghostly. A brilliant story, and one that again feels really important and timely, and looks into people in history who have been lost and forgotten a lot. I just love it. I love it so much. I'm sorry, it's getting dark, so I'm going to try and rattle through the rest of these. Next is Minas Matchbox by Yoko Ogawa, translated by Snyder. I think this is the 4th of Yoko Ogawa's books that I've read now, and I've loved all of them. This is about a girl in 1970s Japan who goes to live with her uncle and his family in their kind of big grand house in the countryside, where they have various animals and weird eccentric characters, including a pygmy hippo who wanders around the garden. This, on the surface of it, seems like a kind of sweet, insubstantial sort of story about, like I say, a collection of quirky characters, and it is so much more than that. It will gradually sneak up on you, like so many of Yoko Ogawa's books do, with this kind of quiet intensity. It's bittersweet and charming and filled with nostalgia, because you're looking back on this time in the narrator's life and how things changed, how her memories are shaped, and it's just a kind of perfect little snapshot of a life. It's written with so much like generosity and warmth to it, but it is also so moving, and it left me feeling so kind of almost like homesick. It's such a specific reading experience that I've never had before, and it's just so special. Next is a book that isn't actually out yet in the UK, and that is Model Home by Rivers Solomon. This isn't out in the US, I believe, and it's out in the UK either February or March, so sometime soon. I'm going to try and do a full review for this closer to when it comes out, if I can remember enough about it, but primarily this is about Ezri, our narrator, and their two sisters, who flee back to their parents' childhood home, which they originally fled from, when they receive a text from someone only known as the Nightmare Mother, and they find their parents are dead in mysterious circumstances. This house was in a very wealthy white neighbourhood in an American state, I can't remember which, in Dallas, Texas. And Ezri and their family, when they lived there, and Ezri's parents, as they continue to live there after their children left, they were the only black family who lived in this very upper class white, what's the word? Rich, that's the one, neighbourhood in Dallas. This follows Ezri and their sisters trying to figure out what's happened to their parents as the kind of police get involved. But more than that, it is a really intriguing, terrifying twist on a haunted house horror. It's so scary. I was completely hooked. Like, I couldn't stop reading because I couldn't look away. I needed to know what was happening. But it's also so much about race and trauma and family and so many different things that are explored through that horror and that terror. It's just masterful. Like, there are moments of utter surreal horror and moments of domestic normality that are brought together in this way that shouldn't work but really does. It's just amazing. I had no idea where it was going, and I was intrigued and terrified the whole time. So good. It's getting really dark, and I'm not speeding through these because I just love them so much and I want to ramble. Next is Penance by Eliza Clarke. This was the second book of Eliza Clarke's that I've read. I've now read 3. I've read all of her books and I fucking love her. She's so cool and a good writer. Penance is framed as a true crime book about a horrible crime where 3 15, 16-year-old girls, something like that, killed one of their classmates in a really distressing way. And it is about getting to the bottom of that, how it happened, but there is so much. There's so much that happens in this. It follows all of the characters around this death in this really insular community in the north of England, a kind of seaside town that's sort of getting more and more run down. It's about female friendships and how terrifying and horrible and weird and confusing they can be when you are like aged 10 to 16. It is about the stories that we tell ourselves and true crime and how the truth can be manipulated. It's disturbing and dark, while also being really thoughtful and thought-provoking, and also a really gripping thriller that I devoured. I listened to the audiobook in about 2 days, and I just couldn't stop listening. Even though you know what's happened and who's done it, there's so much to unpack that just fascinated me. And I am a confirmed Eliza Clarke superfan. She can do no wrong in my eyes. Next is the only non-fiction on this list, and I can't find my copy, which is really frustrating, and that is The Invisible Doctrine by George Monbiot and Peter Hutchison. This is a book about neoliberalism. It is very short. It's a kind of introduction and rapid takedown of neoliberalism as a kind of force, as an ideology, and it explores the history of this idea, where it came from, and how it became a sort of political strategy that has dominated our lives and our political worlds for the last sort of 40-50 years. Most crucially, I think, to why I love this so much is that it offers solutions and alternatives, and how we can start telling a different story that is more powerful than the story of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and knocking other people down. It is very in-depth, but incredibly accessible and just so fascinating. I learned so much. I will go back to it so much when I find my copy, and I just think anyone who is interested in the political world that we live in should read this. Next is The New Life by Tom Crewe. I talked about this in my November wrap-up, so I won't go into too much detail here, but this is everything I hoped it would be and more. This is a historical fiction book set in the late 20th century in London, about two men who are, and their families, but primarily two men whose perspectives that we switch between, who are academics, thinkers, writers, and they start writing this book together about sexuality, and why homosexuality primarily is not evil. This took me a little while to get into, but once I was hooked, I was so engrossed in it. I think I read like the last half in one evening. You get every kind of human emotion in here, and it's all portrayed so realistically and unflinchingly. It's deeply human and hopeful, and just really heartbreaking. That's a third H. I just loved it. It's excellent. And last but not least, we have Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I've had this for years, and like The Five, it's one that I've been meaning to get around to and that I had a really good feeling I would love. And then I did. Surprise! This is about a man who lives in a world that resembles a very large house. It has lots of statues around. He spends his days exploring the halls and stairways of this house, and documenting it and observing its life cycle, its wildlife, the clouds that rain on the upper floors, and the tides that wash in and submerge the lower ones. There is only one other person in his world, and that's how it seems to be. That's all you need to know. This is so beautiful. I'm obsessed with this world, and the way it's described. It is so utterly beautiful. And there is plot, but it takes a little while to get going. But even though I love the story and I love piecing it together and figuring out what was happening, I just loved being inside this character's head and inside his world. It's just beautiful and fascinating, and this is such a gorgeous little well-contained story. I really want this to be made into a video game. I think that would be amazing, where you're like wandering around this seemingly infinite world, finding little scraps of information and observing what's around you. I can visualize it, I can picture it. It would be excellent. So if anyone has this, you know, the power to make that happen, please do. So that's that. My favourite top 11 books of the year. I think you can probably tell by the gushing that I've done about them, how much I love these. And I would love to talk to you about them if you've read any of them. If you've read any other books that you adored this year, tell me your favourites this year, please, or things that you think I would like based on these. Just tell me stuff. Chat to me. I love it. Have a chat to me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you very soon.